Darkest greetings, fellow horror and sci-fi extremists. Jackson here from Horror, Sci-Fi, and Beyond. And joining me tonight is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Eric White.
Hello, everyone.
We're going to be talking about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 from 2009. But we needed a little help on this. Somebody who is a big fan of this movie. My friend, you know her from the De Palma episode we did a few months ago on the show, Ms. Emma James.
Hi.
So Emma and I, we've known each other a long time, but I know that she has a special affinity for very weird and twisted horror movies. So Emma, tell us, what is it about these like really messed up movies that you love so much?
You know, honestly, I think there's a psychological aspect to it. Like it's a way, like really fucked up movies are a kind of a way to engage with trauma and fear in like a safe, confined environment that can't actually hurt you. Anything seems like fair game within those confines because it's you know that it's fake. Like the sickest movies definitely don't disturb me in the way that seeing real life violence in the news does. Like just the other day, I watched one of the supposedly sickest movies ever, August Underground Mortem. And I would agree with that. I mean, in the sense, it is definitely probably the most extreme film I've seen. However, I also, other than admiring the gore effects, which are good because everybody who worked on it apparently went to the Tom Savini makeup school. So got good, convincing effects. But other than that, the movie's dreadful. It's just enough with no substance. Honestly, Fred Vogel's crazy redneck killers could learn a lesson in subtlety from Rob Zombie.
Sometimes less is more. Yeah.
Not that Rob is traditionally the master of subtlety. It's just you can push things so far where it's just cringeworthy rather than disturbing or scary. And yeah, just rolling my eyes as that movie kept just throwing out new shocking things. Yeah. It felt like edgelord internet shit from 2003 when the film was made.
Yeah. Reminds me of I never saw August Underground Morbid, but I watched a movie. Have you ever seen a movie called Slaughter Vomit Girls? It came out around the same.
I'm familiar with Lucifer Valentine, but I haven't really actually delved into his work.
I've seen that one. I haven't seen any of the other ones, and it is like some really like disturbing stuff in there, but it's also just kind of like just not a very like good movie by the end of it. You're just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely how this was. It's like I thought the first August Underground was surprisingly pretty good. For what it was a lot less self-consciously edgelord. Still very extreme, but not like trying way too hard. Like big shock value. And it had better pacing, a little more of a narrative.
Yeah, it sounds like they just were like, we're going to take everything that worked about the first one and turn it to 11.
Yeah. And
for no reason. Yeah.
Sometimes sequels do that, and it's definitely not always the best way to go. It's like The Hangover Part 2 kind of did that. It's the exact same movie, but cruder, meaner, repetitive, less funny. Just diminishing returns.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an equivalent kind of movie that I've seen, because I haven't watched a lot of these like really underground ones. I've seen
Human Centipede, maybe like the second
I've seen
one.
That.
Yeah,
I've seen the second one. I never saw the third one. I don't know. I've seen Begotten.
Yeah.
I feel like Begotten had one cool scene at the beginning, and then after that, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, the rest of it's just like
a slog.
I mean, you open with God's suicide. It's like,
where can you go from there?
Yeah. No one's gonna top that.
Now, the secret behind his madness will finally be revealed.
But tonight we are talking about Rob Zombie, and specifically his version of Halloween 2. Emma, I'm going to let you talk some more because I know that, a lot of people hate on this movie, especially big time Halloween fans, which I'm kind of a so-so Halloween fan. It's not my favorite franchise. I like some entries. I don't like other entries. So I'm pretty lukewarm. I'm even kind of lukewarm on the first one, weirdly enough.
Mm-hmm.
I admire it, but it's not the kind of movie I would just watch casually. But this one seems to get the most hate, even more so than Halloween Resurrection, which I think most people can agree is the real low point of the franchise. Emma, I know you love this movie, and so you don't have to go into great detail. We can do that as we go along, but I'm eager to hear why this one in particular you love so much.
Well, I'm actually am a huge fan of the Halloween franchise. There are only two films that I don't like in the entire series. Of course, Resurrection, and then I was very let down by Halloween Ends. I thought it made some very stupid choices that were a big turnoff, kind of went against the series lore. But
See, I'm a big defender of Halloween Ends, but
I am in the same
we don't
boat.
have to go into that.
But for me, Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie is maybe the best film in the whole franchise, at least right up there with the original, because it's so much deeper and darker than the average slasher. Like what you're watching has real weight to it, real dramatic heft. It's almost like a Shakespearean tragedy in a sense. It's certainly not just like Jason mindlessly stabbing some teenagers. Like it really shows more than any other slasher that I've seen the trauma that victims and survivors go through, and just it's such an ugly film. The brutality of the kill, like it's not one of those fun horror movies like what you're like, oh shit, that kill was awesome.
Right.
It's more like just like it's upsetting. And I think the fact that Zombie pulled that off so well, especially since he's a guy who prior to his Halloween movie had made the Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses, which, while disturbing, are definitely more fun movies.
Yeah.
Two big favorites of mine. Those are a little lighter in comparison. Halloween 2 is, I would say, it's a positive example of taking everything that worked about the first one and taking it to 11, because already his Halloween was a darker, more grounded take on the material. And then you've just got this very traumatized Laurie Strode, just left so shaken by the events of the first film. And of course, in this particular Halloween continuity, she is Michael's sister. The weight of that, the family connection, it's all fascinating. Like it feels so much deeper than the average slasher, and I guess that's what draws me to it.
Eric, where are you sitting at with this film? And let's just open it up to Rob Zombie in general.
Sure.
And, who he is as a filmmaker and all that.
I completely agree with Emma in the sense that this movie deals more directly with like trauma than the average slasher does in any stretch of the, like most slasher movies revel in the kill and like you were saying, and like this one is so much more just like gross, like even down to like the cinematography. So they shot the first one on like 35 millimeter, which is what normal Hollywood movies were shot on around the time. But this one was shot on like 16 millimeters. So it's already sort of this like underground, like grainy. And then they blew it up to 35 and it looks kind of ugly in spots, but like, I don't like that. Like,
but also like beautiful sometimes.
Yeah. So that scene where like Laurie's walking at the beginning and it's like raining kind of, and like Brackett comes up in that police car behind, you've got this like shimmer of like police lights and like grain happening. That's, I don't know. It's very like pretty in its ugliness in some ways, even though it is very graphic and unpleasant sit through. I do agree that
by far the goriest movie in this franchise.
It's a very, very avant-garde kind of art house slasher, which you don't see that much of. Of course, recently, In a Violent Nature went a lot further with that. It was kind of like a core horror film.
Yeah, that's like Terrence Malick directing Friday the 13th.
Exactly, yeah. Very, very much so. I did enjoy that film.
I like In a Violent Nature.
Some people really loved it. Some people absolutely hated it. I thought it was good.
I thought it was fun. I was in the theater. I saw it in theaters with like several people, I don't think they knew what kind of movie they were getting into whenever they went to watch. I think they thought that they were seeing like a normal slasher movie, and so like people were like talking
Right.
like, "Oh my god, what is happening? We've been following this guy for like 20 minutes. He's just walking." They were upset. I loved it. It was great. It was
At the same time, that movie has quite possibly the most heinous kill I've ever seen. in a
that yoga
slasher
that
movie.
yoga
Oh,
kill.
The yoga
girl.
girl.
Oh my
God.
Cool.
Well, then the other one later that was just so prolonged and just drawn out. Don't totally spoil it if people haven't seen it, but it's so horrifying, and like the fact that it's testing your patience almost like makes it more fucked up because it's
that wood chop,
yeah, just this poor bastard's really suffering.
yeah.
Just as extreme as some of the kills in the Terrifier movies.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll
Which
have
I
to get to
wanted-
Terrifier at some point on this
I
show.
wanted to bring up Terrifier 2 because I feel like it's clearly influenced by this film.
Very much.
Definitely
Yes.
deals with the trauma of the main character, Sienna, in a way that
Mhm.
feels reminiscent of this.
But also has that sort of metaphysical slant to it that this
Yeah.
movie has.
yeah.
Are there any other slasher movies in the genre? I mean, I guess maybe H2O, but are there any other ones that directly deal with sort of like characters dealing with their trauma? Or most
I mean,
of them, or
the
is this an
Scream
outlier?
movies, it's all over
Yeah.
the Scream movies.
Yeah.
Ever since the first one, trauma has played a major
Mm.
role in those movies.
I think David Gordon Green's Halloween sequel trilogy, I mean, you
Sure.
definitely say it deals with trauma to mixed effect, but
Mhm.
I really loved the first film in that franchise, and then I liked Kills more than most people, but Ends just completely lost me.
Mm.
Everything about that emo kid, Corey, just no.
Oh, I
Corey
love
Cunningham?
Corey. I love Corey.
Michael Myers riding bitch on an emo teenager's motorcycle. It's so much worse than Michael Myers kung fu fighting Buster Rhymes. Like that's the worst moment in the franchise.
All right. Well, let's unpack Rob Zombie a little bit more then.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to Halloween too, but he's just such a weird dude because you look at his personal life, he seems like the most wholesome person in the world.
Mhm. He's like a vegan. He doesn't do drugs or drink.
Yeah, he's a teetotaler. He like has a farm in Connecticut where he cares for rescue animals. He's been in a loving marriage for like 30 years.
Yeah.
like he's just like this like nice old man at this point. And then he makes these movies and his music as well, but the movies especially that deal with the most dark stuff you can possibly imagine. And he's done it right out the gate. I mean, White Zombie, it was a horror band, and then you get into his solo career, and I actually think his solo music is better than White Zombie.
Sure.
And I don't think that's a very uncommon point of view. I mean, Dragula is a jam.
The Hellboy Deluxe album, fantastic.
It's always fun to see internet videos where they mash up Dragula with like some dance video or people doing aerobics or whatever.
Yeah. It works pretty well with almost any dance.
And then, 20 years ago or so, he starts making movies because he'd been directing his own music videos for a while. And those are pretty cool too. But he starts making movies, and right out the gate, he does this whole Texas Chainsaw homage, but it's campy. And
yeah.
it's, very like pop in colors. It's more like Texas Chainsaw 2 in that way. But then he turns around and makes Devil's Rejects, which is just not that at all. It's not fun. It is brutal and uncomfortable.
More fun than Halloween 2.
I guess, but I mean, when you break it down to what's actually happening on screen, none of it's fun. Like,
no, but you've always got Captain Spaulding. He's always a welcome presence.
Right.
That's true. And like it seems to treat its characters with love. Like he clearly loves the
Fireflies.
It's definitely not as nihilistic as Halloween 2.
Yeah. Nihilistic is a very good word for Halloween 2.
Is it?
It's pretty nihilistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say
everyone, if you watch the director's cut, everyone dies. Like there's other than Brackett.
Not just that,
is the only one.
I'm talking about, Devil's Rejects still, but like everybody in that movie is depraved. That's what we expect from Rob Zombie now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the key to that whole movie is like that Tutti Frutti scene is where they're sitting in the truck and they're driving and they're like going to get ice cream. That's what makes the whole movie like turn, where you're like almost on their side for a minute. Like it tricks your audience into like going
true.
like they're kind of okay people. They like ice cream. They can't.
And then
be
they
that
get
bad.
a hero's death at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great little trick.
The Firefly family they do some of the most evil things you could imagine, but they're undeniably charismatic. They're
right.
enjoyable to watch. You compare that, it's very, very different than the Shape, Michael Myers, just silent, creepy, ominous killer, and no charisma, just fear. It's a very different approach.
Right. Well, silent, I guess, until this movie. I mean, this is like the first one where Michael Myers, the Shape, has talked, isn't it? Is that right? Yeah.
We'll get to that, but
we'll get to it. But yeah.
That's the low point of the movie for me.
In Rob Zombie's first Halloween.
I mean, yes. I mean, we've seen kid Michael Myers talk in these movies, but yeah, this is the first time adult Michael Myers has ever spoken on screen.
Pretty silent overall. I mean, especially compared to like the Firefly family.
Who never shut up. Yeah. Like Rob Zombie, is there anything else to talk about? Like, he's just had such a weird filmography.
It feels like he's always trying something new in a lot of ways. Like each movie is a little different. It's in the same vein, but it's always like trying a little something different.
I mean, he's got his animated movie.
Yeah, it's like a Super Beasto movie.
Yeah, I think that's when I kind of checked out, because I don't think I've seen anything he's made since then. Because I didn't see 3 from Hell. I didn't see 31. I didn't see The Monsters. I saw that one. Was that just after? That was after. Okay. Okay, so I guess that's the last one I saw. I kind of like that one. I mean, it's got a Kubrickian feel to it.
Yeah. Kind of like his Jodorowsky vibe too.
Right. Yeah. I could see that.
Very hallucinatory in a lot of ways. Like he like taking some of the hallucinations from this one and like leaning into them more.
And I did really like that he finally found a way to give his wife the central role, because he clearly loves her dearly and has always wanted to like put her in his movies, but he finally gave her like the lead character in the movie. That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah. It's back to him being kind of a wholesome guy.
Yeah. So just wants to work with his friends and family.
Right.
So you haven't seen 31?
I have not. No.
I've seen 31.
Actually one of my favorites. I was rewatching it recently. It's really such a great authentic throwback to the 70s grindhouse films that Zombie grew up on.
Okay.
It could practically pass for one of those. Much less campy than like House of a Thousand Corpses, really leaning into the darkness again. Kind of a more intelligent, I think more successful take on the idea of the purge. Like not just that extreme where it's the whole world, but like you've got this group of very likable carnies who are abducted by a group of sadistic killers putting them through all these games and stuff. And it's very much a commentary on classism, because Zombie has kind of always got something a little deeper going on in his work, which, as I said with Halloween 2, is part of what draws me to it. He's definitely not just another schlockmeister. He's not just another grindhouse in it for the kills director. He's got something to say. And I think 31 is maybe the most definitive example of commentary in one of his films. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, 31 is good. I would recommend 31. I didn't care for 3 from Hell. I think that may be the only one that I've seen that I was just kind of like, it's kind of just doing Devil's Rejects again, but with a lower budget. But that was the only one that I was just like, it's fine, but it's not great. Yeah.
I have sympathy from 3 for Hell because Sid Haig was too sick to work, so he had to revamp the film with Richard Brake as the third Firefly at the last minute. Just kind of call an audible, and I think it works okay, but it works
fine.
One of those missed opportunities where you wonder if it had been Captain Spaulding like it was supposed to.
Right. If they had made that like 10 years prior or something, but things we'll never get to see.
I don't think I even realized that Richard Brake had replaced Sid Haig in that movie, because Like I said, I never saw it.
Sid Haig is in it briefly. He has
Okay.
like one maybe two scenes. But he passed away, I think, either during filming or right before. But he was very sickly
Okay.
ill during
Shortly
the
Yeah.
process.
after
Yeah,
filming, but
yeah.
the reason he's not in the film more was because he was so sick he couldn't be insured, and
Mm.
the producers would not allow him to do
Oh,
more than a couple scenes because he was a liability.
Well, speaking of break, what do you and you know, none of us are psychologists here, but let's psychoanalyze Rob Zombie a little bit. Like I said, how wholesome he is in real life. Why is it, do you think, that he needs to make every character the worst person in the world in all his movies? Like, even the guys driving the coroner van in this movie are terrible. They're sitting there joking about necrophilia. Even Laurie in this movie, at least especially if you watch the director's cut, like, she is just so mean. And you can kind of understand where she's coming from. She's been through a horrible experience, but other characters have also been, like, Annie's been through that experience too, arguably an even worse experience than Laurie's been through, and she's not acting that way. But I don't know. What do you think it is that attracts Zombie to these sorts of awful, awful people?
I think it's just what he finds entertaining. I mean,
Mm.
it doesn't seem to be coming from like, I don't think he has like some inner darkness that he's unleashing through his art. I don't really know. I mean, maybe, but I don't really know enough about him personally to assume that. It seems like more like he's just entertained by these very colorful, kind of extreme personalities. Because even like the good characters in his movies, like the Carnies in 31, I mean, they're just nonstop swearing and vulgarity, just very just as crude as like the Firefly family. They're just not evil. I
Yeah.
think he has a certain way he writes, and he writes every character that way pretty much, except in the Munsters, which was very different.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen the Munsters.
I haven't
heard
seen it, but I've
middling
heard
things
it's
about it.
I've heard it's
Yeah.
very family friendly.
It's very much like it's just kind of an obsessive fan film of the Munsters. Very, very faithful to it because that's what inspired him so much as a kid. He just pretty much just straight up made that.
And you can see those imprints on like Dracula and like the early music videos. They're very sort of like garish, but they're like hyper stylized, sort of like 50s like horror and sci-fi schlock, but like taken to like more gritty extremes in some ways.
Well, even something like the Living Dead Girl video, that's a whole like Dr. Caligari.
Yeah.
So yeah, he clearly has this love for horror history. Doesn't seem like he has that much love for the Halloween franchise.
No, and I think some of that was, I think he probably loved the Halloween franchise, but I think some of that probably came from the way the first movie was made, and that there was constantly like people meddling with it. I know he had there was a lot. I read a book recently. It was it's called Taking Shape.
Okay,
did a book about all the Halloween movies, and apparently like the Weinsteins were very meddling in that first one, and so like he was like, I'm not doing it again, I'm not gonna do another one. They shopped it around for a while, and then eventually he came back to it because he was set loose from the first one, so like he could just take his characters to do whatever with them. There was no like predisposed like it has to be like Halloween 2 and take place in a hospital and that sort of stuff. But like I think he likes the Halloween movies, but I think he likes what he can do to them more than just like, or how he can deconstruct them and change them. I don't know.
I mean, clearly, like me, he's a Texas Chainsaw guy.
Yeah.
So he's like, what if Halloween was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I mean, I don't, as far as like him making like very graphic and disturbing art, I mean, I don't know. It's every artist has their own brush. It's like Francis Bacon, painted all these like graphic sort of like mutilated corpses and like, and Francis Bacon was an alcoholic, but he wasn't like a terrible person. And so like, I think it's just like, even on like a subconscious level is what sort of like draws you to a subject. And then like sort of what Emma was saying is like what you want to say about it once you're there. So like almost using sort of like horror movies and sort of like exploitation movies as sort of like a lens into saying something bigger than just like brutal violence or anything like that.
One of the big hangups that Halloween franchise fans have about this movie and the previous movie to a certain extent, but more so this movie, is the characterization of Laurie Strode. because it is so far removed from Jamie Lee Curtis. Like it's really not the same character. Not even in the first one, because the first one, like, she's more reserved and everything, but she's still like making dirty jokes, and she's more like a regular teenage girl.
And Laurie Strode smokes pot in the first Halloween. So like she's also not a very good. I don't know. I think those
they kind of give it to her, and they kind of like egg her on to smoke it. She probably feels guilty about it later. But Laurie in these movies is just, she's way more of a free spirit. But man, in this movie, she is traumatized to a level that we haven't even seen from the character before. Because, you know, when you look at the original Halloween franchise, you know, she shows up in the second one, but it's the same night. And so she hasn't even dealt with it at all. And then we don't really pick her up again until H2O. And that's 20 years later. And she's very different in that. And then in Halloween 2018, she's even more different. She's like this crazy reclusive survivalist type. But I'm eager to hear y'all's thoughts on how they do Laurie in these movies.
Very drastically different from like the wholesome, innocent virgin Jamie Lee Curtis image. But I like that because the way Laurie is in the first film, like you said, already a little more heightened, a little darker than the Jamie Lee Curtis Laurie. I like that because it's authentic to the way Rob Zombie depicts characters and tells stories, like we were just talking about. It's a Laurie Strode for Rob Zombie's universe. And definitely, like, she's absolutely unlikable in the second movie. She's just very very just downright batshit crazy at times, but I think it's very reflective and realistic regarding the trauma. You can see where she's coming from. I definitely don't think I can get why like Halloween purists would be turned off by that because it is different, but also the original movies that we all love exist. Like those are still always there. Rob Zombie hasn't done anything to those films,
right,
and taken away from them. This doesn't replace the continuity. I think Scout Taylor-Compton did a terrific job as Laurie in these movies.
Agreed.
She deserves any hate. And yeah, just as an alternate approach, the zombification of the Halloween movies and Laurie, I find it fascinating. I'm glad we have the original, of course. I wouldn't want this to be the only take on Halloween, but as like a alternate universe, like you were saying, like Texas Chainsaw type Halloween, I really dig it. Really like the interpretation of the character.
I think they can all go kick rocks. Like it, I think it's great. I think it is in all the ways that Emmett was describing. It's its own thing, and that's not a bad thing to be. In honesty, I hope that if they move forward and continue to make Halloween movies, that we see branches out. Like we move away from that Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode character. I mean, they're going to have to at some point, but because they could explore so many other avenues with this sort of boogeyman in the dark. And like, if we just keep making the same movie and over again, where's the fun in that? You're just going to see the same thing. Like you were saying, we already have those movies. Let's make something new.
Well, this movie does nothing if not make something new out of this franchise. Which brings us to the other major character of the franchise is Dr. Samuel Loomis, where this is one, I like this movie. I don't really like where they take Loomis because, so in the first Rob Zombie movie, at least, like he's kind of doing why can't I think of his name?
Donald Pleasance.
Donald Pleasance. Why was I kept wanting to say Daniel Pleasance? I was like, that's not right.
Daniel Plainview.
Daniel Plainview. That'd be cool. Is Daniel Day-Lewis as Dr. Loomis. I've been examining this man 15 years. And for the first 7 years, I tried to get through to him. And in the last 8 years, I just wanted to keep him away from everyone else and drink his milkshake. So Malcolm McDowell in the first movie, he's pretty much doing Donald Pleasance. Like he's a little bit more arrogant, I guess. But Loomis is still kind of arrogant in the original. You know, he's the guy who shows up and he knows everything and he can do anything and he's the one guy that can stop this man. But it makes sense because we'd never seen a movie quite like that before. But then, man, he shows up in this movie and he is the worst.
Yeah.
Like, he is the actual worst. He has no qualms about profiteering off of this horrible tragedy. He doesn't care. He talks to his assistant like she is complete dirt. Like, he is verbally abusive throughout the movie. He has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
He tries to redeem himself at the very end.
And how does that go for him?
It goes great. It goes great for him.
But I don't know, Emma. How do you feel about how they portray Loomis in this movie?
It's a way more dramatic difference than Laurie, because
Right.
you've got, the Donald Pleasance Loomis, who's like a good guy and in a bunch of the movies, and then he always stay fairly sympathetic.
Right.
Got this second movie, especially like you were saying, with the Malcolm McDowell Loomis, and yeah, he's a total asshole. He's a grifter to the extreme. He has no concern for anyone. He's like a really, really extreme Gale Weathers.
Yes.
And,
I guess, but like, he's so much worse than her.
yeah, he's terrible, but like, it's the Rob Zombie version of that type of person. And I just love the scene where he's on the talk show with Chris Hardwick and Weird Al.
Weird Al. Mr. Weird. Yeah.
I love that Weird Al was amazing. Just a great Weird Al side quest moment.
But yeah, like, he's got that scene where he's in the store signing books or whatever, and the father of Linda from the first movie shows up with a gun and everything.
Oh, that's a great
and
scene.
I'm sitting there like, I kind of hope he puts a bullet in this guy's head. He'd be totally justified in doing so.
Yeah.
Because Loomis doesn't even recognize this girl. It's terrible. Oh, good.
I mean, I guess it still ties back into that, the idea of like this movie is really about trauma and sort of like the aftermath of violence, and that, he's exploiting it for his own gain. But it's also maybe a critique on like people who watch these movies too, is that they are reveling in sort of this, or like, is that what maybe the ultimate thing is, that we
so it's
are
Rob
sort of
Zombie's
Loomis?
funny games, basically.
I can see that. Or like, or like how Lars von Trier like spends a lot of the house that Jack built judging us and himself. Like, goes
watching and enjoying it. Yeah.
I think it's kind of like that. I think it's kind of like that.
Yeah, and of course it's telling, like, right before Linda's dad shows up, you've got the really weird guys like, can you make it out to Chet, bringer of death? Chet with two T's.
Is he wearing that, like, he's wearing a shirt that says like, what would Michael do, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it's really awful.
One other thing I would say about Loomis in this film that's interesting, as his function in the film kind of provides a secondary antagonist beyond just Michael, or possibly even a tertiary antagonist. Like, if you take the metaphysical aspect of Laurie's trauma as a villain in itself, they've only got three evil forces in this movie, with Loomis being one of them. I think that's a really interesting approach.
Yeah. I mean, he basically, he in some ways psychologically treats her worse than Michael Myers does, just in it, like, exposing her secret without any sort of like regard that, she is,
because the main
sister.
action of the movie, like, he's not even in.
Yeah.
He doesn't even interact with the other characters until the very end of the movie. It's just, he's this sort of looming Loomis ghost in the background with this book, and the cover keeps showing up, and there's billboards, and when's the last time you saw a billboard for a book release? What is that about?
I mean, this is 15 years ago now, so.
It's interesting to me that this version of Loomis this movie came out like right around the time that true crime was starting to really blow up.
Yeah.
The whole murder reenactments and all that stuff, the documentaries. So maybe like, I would say it's probably not a commentary on that intentionally, because that stuff hadn't really taken off yet. It was years before South Park did their informative murder porn episode.
Right.
Loomis is in that vein of like the really sleazy, exploitive end of the true crime stuff, for sure, with no regard to the well-being of the victims and survivors.
Yeah, of course they do it again with David Gordon Green in 2018. And they've got the podcasters, but of course they meet a pretty quick end. Loomis is kind of in and out of this movie for the duration. I guess we need to talk about all the hallucinations and psychic links and the white horse of it all. You know, first of all, this movie starts with this quote about like the white horse representing like instinct and purity and like chaos and destruction, and it's from a totally made up book.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's just apparently what happened is Rob Zombie, he was writing the script and he was driving home one day and he saw a white horse out in a pasture and was like, hey, that looks cool, and then decided to build the whole movie around this visual metaphor that doesn't make any sense at all. So I guess my question is, can we make sense of this? Is there any possible way to make sense of this?
I mean, in popular culture, like they've used like a white horse for like to signify some sort of evil at some points. I mean, like Twin Peaks did it quite a bit back in the day. Like that horse shows up in the room.
I've never watched
like
Twin Peaks.
Oh, see, Twin Peaks is pretty great. It's a big reference in like the like season 3. But I mean, even like the pale horse and like death. Yeah, this is all after this. But I mean, the first Twin Peaks was before that. So like it shows up in the first season too, which is like the 90s, 90, 91. But I mean, even though like, you know, death rides on a pale horse, that sort of thing. It's just like, I think it's like it's probably it's out there in the zeitgeist. And I think he just like grabbed something that was like, that's a cinematic and visually interesting motif. Does it quite pay off in the way that I think it probably maybe not? I don't know. I mean, there's something about her ending up in that white room at the end, in the sense that she's like been taken in by the white horse. It's evil now. It's all encompassed her. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, see, weirdly enough, so when you go to the Revelation reference, like it says that death is on a pale horse, but that's different from the white horse in the Bible. Because in the Bible, the white horse is what Jesus rides in on to like redeem everything. And so maybe it should have been a pale horse. I don't know.
I don't know. Is that as stark a contrast? I don't know.
No, of course it's not. It looks better as a white horse.
That's probably the metaphor, the illusion that he was going for there. Probably a Revelation type thing. I think it looks really cool. I love the scene at the end. You've got a very, very twisted family reunion. If you wanted to be really ungenerous to this metaphor, you could maybe call it pretentious or indulgent. I just think it adds to the film visually enough that it's not really taking anything away. I mean, it's just more another example of how this is a more elevated horror, version. It's like the A24 version of Halloween, too.
Yeah. I did wonder this time through when I was watching it, like if you remove that title at the beginning, which is a little bit of psychobabble and doesn't really quite mean anything, and it's from a fake book, like if you remove that and just kept all the horse stuff in there, would it? I feel like it would be more impactful. Like I feel like telling us the first thing, it kind of like demystifies a little bit in some ways.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Well, for my part, like I really enjoy all of those scenes. My favorite in particular is like the sort of snowy scene where it's like a dream sequence and you have all the pumpkin head people like eating
got that
dinner.
Skeleton
the
with
skeleton
like
with
the shape mask on it.
With the shape mask and everything. And I honestly think it is pretentious and it's a whole lot of nonsense, but it's cool and weird enough and different enough from anything else you see in a Halloween movie that I don't care. So I guess that's where I land on this movie is like, even when it's silly and stupid, I don't really care because at least it's trying something new. I don't know. If anybody else has more intelligent things to say about it, I'm willing to listen.
I think it's interesting that his next film was just taking that imagery, like that kind of avant-garde experimental, really doubling down on it with The Lords of Salem.
Right.
It's way more out there as an overall film than anything else he's made. So he was clearly in like the art house zone there for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, and I feel like every movie he's made sort of like builds upon the previous one. So like taking the stuff that he learned in House of Thousand Corpses and doing something that took that but then built upon it, and like really is just like building blocks for each movie that comes after, which is really interesting to watch. Like if you watch them all in order.
Well, it also builds on his history as directing music videos.
Yeah, right.
So a lot of stuff you see in music videos is bullshit. Like,
but it looks good. It looks good.
It looks
so
cool.
Yeah.
It looks cool. And sometimes, and I'm kind of this way with Zack Snyder too. Not so
Mhm.
much lately, because I feel like he's tried to be too much of a storyteller in his recent films, and he's not good at that.
Uh-huh.
But like you watch his early films like 300 and like, oh, especially what's the
Sucker
one?
Punch.
Yes, that one.
Mm.
And it's just like, oh, this looks cool, and that's enough. Who cares if it's a 2.5 hour music video? I certainly
Sometimes
don't.
that's all that matters. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I think Zombie does a lot of that. He didn't really do it in the first Halloween, because I remember watching the commentary for the first Halloween, and he kept talking about like the visual style he wanted. He wasn't looking at horror movies. He was looking at like Inarritu movies. He was like, I want to make it look like 21 grams.
Oh man.
And this is like
Yeah.
old Inarritu before Birdman
Right.
and The Revenant and his sort of current visual phase. But like his early movies are all these gritty, handheld,
Mhm.
and he does that mostly in this movie, and then cuts away to, Pumpkinhead people eating dinner next to a, Michael Myers skeleton or whatever. And I'm kind of willing to let him do it.
Same.
Same.
I mean, it goes back to like we have the old ones. Let's do something new with it. It's great. I enjoy all the visuals. I think they're inspired in some ways, even when they don't quite make sense sometimes, like the Pumpkin Men and all that sort of stuff. But
Right.
In some ways, it's sort of like the spirits of Halloween are there, and that's why all these things are like. If you really wanted to like maybe try to force a meaning onto it, is that like the season itself is like has influenced him, even if it's all just in his mind or in Laurie's mind at that point. Because that's the question too, is like, do they have a psychic link? Is there one?
Well, that's kind of one of the questions I wanted to broach tonight is Michael Myers supernatural in this movie? Because there seems to be kind of a psychic link. He's clearly survived a direct gunshot to the head at close range. Yeah. And he picks up a car and flips it over like by himself. They've flirted with Michael being supernatural, particularly when you get to like the Curse of Thorn and all of that stuff. But like, is he just straight up doing it in this movie?
Good question. Don't know for sure. I mean, I think this movie does hint a lot at what was it? Five that had Revenge, that has like the psychic link between Jamie and Michael. Is that the one? I think
it's been a while since I've seen 5.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like that one though. A lot of people hate it, but I kind of like it.
So yeah, I think it's cribbing from a couple different places without like being direct in that it's like a 1-for-1. It's like giving the illusion that it is that without having to definitely say it. So you as an audience can pick up on like these visual cues and go like, oh, maybe they have a psychic link, but instead of like giving definitive answers, because definitive answers are kind of boring. So like saying for sure, like, oh yeah, they have a psychic link. It's kind of like, oh, okay, well, but now we're talking about it. We're questioning it. We're wondering whether it's true or not.
I like that it's ambiguous. I mean, I think they have a psychic link, but I like that Rob Zombie's not just like, hey, this is the fucking Force.
Yeah.
I like that it's not like those scenes in like The Last Jedi of Kylo Ren and Rey communicating telepathically. I'm glad it's not that. It's not just spelled out directly, but yeah, I think the psychic connection is real.
Yeah. I think it's more so, especially by the end, once she's in the barn. Once Laurie's in the barn with them.
Which I guess brings us to the ending of this movie. Of course, whether you watch the theatrical or director's cut, the ending of this movie is very different. Like, between the two cuts, like the differences are there, but they're sort of interspersed. But the ending of each is incredibly different. And I'm curious to find out which one y'all prefer. Because I have the one I prefer, but
I don't know that I've seen the theatrical cut.
Really? Oh, okay.
I like I saw the first version I saw was the director's cut, and I love it so much. I've just never. I don't even know what the ending to the theatrical cut is.
Yeah. So it ends almost the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I saw the theatrical cut like when it came out. I actually went to the drive-in and saw a double feature of this movie and Inglourious Bastards.
Nice.
What a choice. Yeah.
It was awesome. I actually saw the first one at the drive-in too. It was a double bill with Halloween and Superbad.
Oh, wow. Who's pairing these movies up?
I don't know, but it was awesome. I mean, it was just like they mostly showed family-friendly movies. So whenever they had R-rated movies, they just put them together.
Yeah. Okay.
So in the theatrical cut, Emma, they get to the shack and everything leading up to like Loomis showing up and being like, "Stop it, Michael! Stop it! Stop it!" That's all the same. But in the theatrical version, there's this piece like a pitchfork or some other piece of farm equipment sticking out from the wall, and like there's a big fight, and like Michael kills Loomis, like stabs him over and over and over again. Laurie somehow pushes Michael onto this piece of farm equipment, or he falls. I can't exactly remember.
I think Brackett gets a shot off, maybe, or someone.
That's right.
From the
That's what
sniper.
happened. So Brackett gets a shot off into the window, and that's when Michael falls onto this piece of equipment and impales him. And then Laurie picks up the knife and goes over and just keeps stabbing him over and over again.
Yeah. Well, she says, "I love you, brother," or something at first, like before that.
She says,
right?
"I love you, mommy." Yeah, she's talking to like the Mrs. Myers ghost, you know. And then she stumbles out of the shed alone, wearing the Michael mask, and like falls to the ground on her knees and takes off the mask, and then it fades into the hospital scene where it's going down the hallway, and that part's the same. You know, the horse comes walking down and everything. So it's very different.
Especially in the implication that she's still alive in the theatrical version.
Right. Whereas she is dying in the director's cut. Because for anyone who hasn't seen the director's cut, what happens at the end is Michael and Loomis come through the wall, like, you know, and you're expected to believe that Loomis is dead. Michael somehow killed him in that tussle or whatever. And then Michael like is standing there and all the police start shooting him and he falls over. Well, first he says to Loomis, he says his one word.
Yeah.
He's grunted throughout the movie, but he looks at Loomis and goes, "Die." And then, you know, stabs him and everything. So Loomis is dead. And then all the police shoot Michael, and then Laurie comes stumbling out, and you think she's, you know, traumatized or whatever, and she is. She goes and picks up the knife and starts walking over to Loomis. Then all the police shoot her, and as she's dying, it fades to the hospital scene. So that covers both the endings here.
It sounds like I would definitely prefer the director's cut. I think it fits with the darkness and the themes of Zombies film a lot more. Doubles down on the trauma angle and how the way the violence impacts everybody, that literally every major character is dead by the end of this film. Including Laurie, I think that's just a more faithful ending to the tone of the film.
I just never really liked Michael getting like impaled on like the farm equipment. It felt so like kind of cheap when I saw the theatrical version. I was like, that's how he goes out. I prefer this one just in the sense that Laurie is kind of gunned down at the end. That sort of like cycle of violence kind of continuing. Like basically it's implied that maybe she might have like become him, but we don't know for sure. I don't know. I think I prefer the director's cut version.
See, the reason I prefer the theatrical version is because I don't like that Michael goes out by being gunned down by all the police.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Like, I feel like there's probably a happy medium,
right,
somewhere where, you know, Laurie kills Michael and then comes out with the Michael mask on and maybe has the knife or something, and then she gets gunned down, and that makes sense to me. It's just the visual of Tyler Mane just standing there and getting hit by all these bullets and herky jerking around and everything. I just don't like it. And I don't like that, you know, Michael gets one word and it's just die. It's so cheesy to me.
I feel like it would have made more sense if he said Loomis or something, you know, like I don't know. Maybe anything else. I don't know.
Anything, literally anything. I don't know. But
is the song the same at the very end in both versions?
No, they don't. It's have
different,
Love
isn't
Hurts.
It? Yeah,
at the end
I like
of the theatrical cut.
and
I like that. I like
the Love
lot.
Hurts, and
it's
I would
really
say
good.
More than anything else, I would want to keep that versus the versus. I think it's just the theme. I think it's just the Halloween theme in the theatrical version. I think. I wonder, how does this stack for everyone in sort of like their Rob Zombie filmography? Like, is this like top tier? We don't have to rank them all or anything. Is this like top tier zombie or like mid tier or like low tier?
It's for sure my second favorite zombie film. And it I mean, it would be a perfectly great pick for first, but honestly, I have such a soft spot for corpses. It's kind of my ultimate comfort movie. It just it's such a thrill ride. It always puts me in a mood.
Yeah, it's a fun house, the whole movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's I saw it 2 times theatrically in October last year, and both times, you know, after having seen it like a dozen times before, it just
Mhm.
loses nothing, you know. It just every time it's so fun. And Dr. Satan and the fucking weird little show that the Firefly family
Mhm.
puts on at the beginning when they first have the guests at their house. Just all this stuff I love so much about that movie. It's
Mhm.
honestly one of my favorite films of all time. So Halloween 2 is just a little notch below that, but
Mm.
very S tier zombie for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm always waiting on like, and I know we'll never get it. I'm always waiting for like the director's cut of House of Thousand Corpses because they cut out like 20 minutes or something like that when Universal took it over or something ridiculous. And so like supposedly it's all lost, but you
Yeah,
know, I'm
lost.
hopeful.
And all 20 minutes is just waiting for that guy to shoot that other guy in the head.
That's my favorite bit in the entire movie. That Walton Goggins scene is so good. Love it. I love that scene.
I made a short film once where we copied that, where we just had a character hold up a gun to another character's head and waited so long for them to shoot.
Good.
I think this might be my favorite Rob Zombie movie. And I'm not somebody like just adores his movies, certainly not as much as Emma does. I enjoy his movies, but to me, this is kind of like putting it all together for him because he's doing a big like Hollywood property, but he's doing it in such a him kind of way. Yeah, you just don't see anything quite like it, especially from a big franchise. So, I mean, you know, I like the Fireflies as much as you can like them. I mean, they're terrible, but they're sort of fun to watch. Like he took a Halloween movie and made it all weird and metaphysical and just so Rob Zombie. So yeah, I think this is like probably the top for me.
I'm kind of like I really like those first two, so this one's probably like third for me, but it's still on that like top tier. But I really like House and Rejects, so this is probably like third in list for me.
The only zombie film I actually don't like is El Super Beasto.
That one's terrible.
Yeah.
I respect his influences there. Like obviously he worships Ralph Bakshi, but it's like this unsatisfying, puerile, like great humor blend of like Bakshi and Family Guy, but dumber and less funny to quote.
Yeah.
And not satisfied. It's kind of like if his films were only the vulgarity of the characters without the horror, without any interesting elements. You've got some little songs in there that Chris Hardwick and another dude wrote. It's just it's silly, it's not that fun. It's not terrible, but it's definitely my least favorite zombie. It's the only one I'm gonna bat for.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And it's kind of like cheaply animated too. It's sort of like bottom tier animation. Yeah.
Like it's like almost like a step above Flash animation, like Newgrounds.
Right. So as far as this movie goes, what is your favorite part and least favorite part? So Emma.
Honestly, I really, really love the ending. Of the director's cut, I think it's satisfying, bleak, but like certainly the opposite of a happy ending. It's very downer, but it's true to the spirit of the film. I think it's just really great moment of filmmaking there from Zombie. But also I love that scene I was talking about with Loomis on the talk show. I love the scene where he's confronted by Linda's dad. So many great moments in this movie. I think Malcolm McDowell giving a really terrific performance and reminding us how good of an actor he is. Because he's in so many cheap B movies and stuff nowadays, so much crap that you would almost forget how talented this guy is. And you're like, oh yeah, that was the guy from A Clockwork Orange. He just this year had a part in Thelma, which was a really great movie. Yeah. And he did a very different type of role there that I liked. So it's always nice to have reminders of how good Malcolm McDowell is.
Yeah. What's your least favorite part?
I'm excited for the new ultimate cut of Caligula. That's going to be cool.
Oh gosh.
Hopefully it doesn't have a single frame that was in the original movie. It's all footage, which I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm excited. I think it's getting like a boutique Blu-ray release. I'll buy it. I'll check it out. I like
wonderful.
But yeah, I guess my least favorite. I don't know.
See, you can say no. We sometimes cheat on this show. Yeah. And just go like there's nothing I don't like about the movie.
Part.
Yeah.
How do I know that that's a fake book at the beginning? It does seem a little weird to quote that. That's a little cheesy. but like I would even I like it sometimes in a comedy to have a fake quote, like the Eleanor Roosevelt quote at the beginning of Talladega Nights.
Right.
That's obviously
You can't do that
fake.
for a serious movie. You can't just bullshit a book.
Yeah.
Kind of silly.
My favorite part, and this is sort of like a hard thing to say is my favorite part, but is when Brackett finds his daughter after, because we don't really even see sort of like the killing, the murder on screen. It's sort of shown in flashes, but like his reaction to it is so like guttural and hard to watch, and we linger on it for so long, and it's just like it really kind of doubles down on like what the movie is sort of going for. So it's a hard scene to watch, but I think it might be my favorite piece in it. Plus Brad Dourif's really good in it, which I don't think he gets enough credit. He sometimes gets stuck in like schlock as well, sort of like Malcolm McDowell, where he's just like they got a name, he shows up for a scene and does, but he's really good in here. He's really good, and especially like earlier scenes wherever he's they have the pizza scene, he talks about Cat Bayou and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I was honestly I was gonna pick Brad Dourif in general as my favorite part, but I'll pick something else. But yeah, it's cool because Brad Dourif is kind of the classical creep actor. He's Chucky. He plays all these, like, he's Wormtongue. He plays all these terrible, terrible people. It's nice to see him play like an actual good person.
Yep.
Even though what happens to him in the movie is just the worst. He is not rewarded at all for being a good person. But when he wants to, he can have this warm, sweet, gentle presence. And that's nice to see. All right. What's your least favorite part?
I mean, I would say probably it's like the scene. It's the first scene we see with all the girls in the coffee shop. Like some of the stuff they're talking about feels like written by like a 40-year-old dude who doesn't really know how teenagers talk. Some of that stuff feels a little like maybe I don't know, but some of that stuff feels a little awkward to me. But not that it really takes away from the movie itself. But like that's the point where I'm just like, up until that point, I'm on board with everything, and then that feels like it's outside of itself or something. I don't know. Feels like it's from almost a different movie.
So my favorite part, now that I have to pick something different, because it's Brad Dourif. You know what? Forget it. I'm picking Brad Dourif in general. Like, for all the reasons I just said, I can't pick another favorite part. He's my actual favorite part of this movie. So I try to be original with my favorite parts, but I can't do it this time. He's the best part of the movie. He's the best part of the first one too, to me. Yeah. Least favorite part is Michael's death at the end of the director's cut, if we're talking about that.
Yeah.
It's a little different in the theatrical cut, obviously, but I don't know, the visual of him just getting hit by those bullets, and right before it, when he gets one word and he just says, die. I don't know. It's super cheesy and I don't like it.
I can see how you would see that as cheesy. Like, that's fair, but I like it. I don't think
it's fine if you like it. I'm not begrudging you at all.
Sounds more like what Eric said with the farm equipment impalement. To me, that sounds a lot cheaper than going down an.
Well, that's not what kills him, though. Laurie kills him by stabbing him many times.
Which, if she had done that in this one too, like if she had, like, I think you were saying it earlier, it's probably somewhere in between.
The farm equipment is just keeping him in place while she kills him.
Right.
So you have to see it, I guess. Yeah. It makes sense when you see it. But anyway.
I'm about to go look it up.
Okay.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention that because we forgot, like I was planning to mention it and it just totally slipped my mind. Octavia Spencer is one of the victims in this movie.
Right?
She's like an orderly at the hospital and gets murdered by Michael. And this was like a couple years before she won the Oscar for The Help.
Right. But, she is in this.
Remember some of the weird bit parts she had. Like she was one of the hookers in Bad Santa.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm glad she became a big star because she's a very likable presence. But she's really in like 2 seconds of this movie and gets murdered.
Tell you what, since we're on this, like, since it's a slasher movie, before we do rating, let's also go around and do favorite kill.
The guy's driving the van.
It's pretty good. Cuts that dude's head off with a piece of glass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not like a quick head cut off either.
No, it takes a minute.
I like my kills like that, just savage in slasher movies, like right. A girl in a Violent Nature, just some crazy shit like that.
Yeah. Eric, what's your favorite kill?
I mean, this is a hard movie to say favorite kill in, but
Yeah, they're all pretty terrible. But
I mean, I like the head crush. I think it's fun. I think it's probably
that's
the
one I was
most
gonna
fun of
pick.
all of it. Well, then I'll do the
No, you're
mirror
gonna pick
smash.
it.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do it.
that was the other one I was gonna
mirror
pick.
smash.
That was the other one I was
We'll
gonna
switch
pick.
off then.
I think that we didn't even talk about the
Right, the red rabbit or
Red Rabbit or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, that whole sequence is super fun. Daniel Roebuck gets in
Yeah.
there. He's a zombie regular.
Mhm.
You know, he was almost Marv in Home Alone.
Was he really?
He actually, so they wanted Daniel Stern, but he wasn't available. So they got Daniel Roebuck. He came on and actually shot for a couple days.
Whoa.
And the chemistry between him and Joe Pesci just wasn't clicking.
Mm.
So they went back to Daniel Stern and offered him more money, and he came and did it. So yeah, I will pick as my favorite kill either of the ones that Eric just picked. They're both pretty great. I do like that Michael in this movie, he does a lot more blunt force trauma
Yeah.
than in a lot of the other ones. You know, it's not all just stabby. It's hitty. So
Right. Which apparently, and this was another thing, we didn't really get into this. Some of the kills later on, so like the Wolfman and like
oh yeah,
one of the other friends.
The Halloween party, the awesome
The Halloween party. Yeah. A lot of those are supposed to be more elaborate, sort of like offings. But because at the beginning they lost like 2 weeks, like they had 2 weeks cut from their schedule, like just off the top. And so like they lost just time to do things that weren't just simple kills in those parts. But
was that Weinstein or?
Pretty sure, yeah.
They apparently lost a lot of footage.
Yeah, they accidentally got footage scanned at the airport.
Yeah.
And so like they had it like
It was like 20 hours of footage.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Why does this keep happening to Rob Zombie?
I don't know. Okay. Let's do rating. So Emma, what would you give this on the filmmaking scale?
5.
Okay.
I think it's an absolutely fantastic film. One of the best and most interesting slashers ever made. Yeah, I think it's a masterpiece of the genre.
All right. And what would you give it on theme?
5.
Okay.
I think because it dares to explore trauma in such a real and visceral way that you just don't see in all these movies full of mindless violence. And just the weightiness of it, and then how well I think that's executed. Yeah, I would have to go 5.
Eric, filmmaking.
I probably won't go as high as a 5. I'm probably going to go a 4 because there are some things in here I'm like, that's a little too dark. Like there's some stuff that I'm just like, oh, they probably should have used a little more lights than that, which it makes sense like how they light these things. A lot of the times they would light them so that they could shoot in any direction they wanted to when they got to set. So there's just things that fall in the darkness, and when they start blocking it, like things just get too dark. But there's a few shots of them like that's probably a little too dark. But so I'd say a 4, even though there's some beautiful stuff in here.
Okay, and theme?
I'm gonna say a 4 again. I do think this is a very thoughtful addition to sort of like the slasher genre, which we don't really ever get. So 4. So I give it a solid 4.
Okay, so for filmmaking, I'm also going to give it a 4. I think it's really well put together. Every once in a while, there'll be some editing that I'm just like, I don't really know quite. It's a little choppy or whatever. I'm not going to knock it too much for that. Theme, I'm not quite as high on the theme as y'all are. I'm going to have to give it a 2. I like this movie. I really like this movie, but I don't see quite the depths in it that Emma, you do, and Eric, you do to some extent as well. I don't know. It does feel a little bit hollow in spots to me. I think he's trying, but it doesn't feel fully fleshed out, as especially when you explore trauma as some of the movies in the genre that come after this.
Sure.
It's trying for it, but I don't feel like it's quite there. So I am going to give it a 2 in that department, which means that we collectively are going to give this a 6 out of 10, which I think is a respectable score and more than a lot of horror fans would probably give it.
That's true.
But when you average it out, yeah. Okay. Wait, no. 8 out of 10. Sorry, I did my math wrong.
Yeah, then that makes much more sense.
Yes, 8 out of 10.
Math-wise, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I don't math well, so
it's okay.
Forgive me. All right, if you like this episode and want more spooky and weird and extreme content, make sure you slash that subscribe button and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, X, and Spotify at Horror, Sci-Fi, and Beyond. And don't forget to leave a killer comment and give this episode a Tyler Mane size thumbs up. So from us at Horror, Sci-Fi, and Beyond, y'all, stay weird.